And then I guess as a kind of final question, if we were to kind of round up and say, okay, well, how does short-term lets compare to other types of strategies? And you could even consider strategies like a holiday let investment or as a service to accommodation investment. Or what we get typically asked a lot by investors is looking at how can they maybe increase the rental yields and returns they got on a standard property. So buy-to-let is great for lots of reasons, gives lots of stability. It's the cornerstone of our portfolio. There's plenty of investors out there that just want an extra couple of % on the yield. Yeah. How can they kind of get that? And they might usually look at things like HMOs, short-term lets, or if they're going to be very hands-on, they might do their own developments to refurb, add value, and then maybe flip on and things like that. So to sum up, let's say the range of strategies that are available from sort of 2020 beyond, for most investors, how does short-term let kind of compare, do you think?
Well, what have you got now? So let's say, look at your refurb side. I mean, from us as a company, it'd be impossible to source a particular property based on whether someone may or may not want it. There's other areas that can do that. But there's no guarantees in that, like anything. And it's, you buy something, you do it up, you put some money in, which is money you've got to find, or a bridging finance, whatever it may be, and then you sell. So, I mean, it's the same as everything else at the end of the day, and it's just a different way of doing it. Yeah. And then you got the buy-to-let side where it's safe and vanilla. I mean, vanilla's a horrible word, but, it does what it says on the tin.
Yeah.
In fact, you're in a nice area that's got, a good demand, long-term tenants, perfectly acceptable strategy.
Yeah, and I think it just comes down to specifically the investors as well. We know investors that would only ever do their own developments because they want to add that value. They want to kind of be hands-on with it, and they want to increase the value in some way over and above just a mainstream rental. And likewise for buy-to-lets, we've got plenty of kind of clients and colleagues that we work with that just prefer having a terrace house or an apartment in one location. It's rented to the management company. They don't have to consider it for the next 5-10 years. They've got a busy life, they've got kind of a family or work that they need to kind of consider, and they're their mainstream strategies. And this is where I think things like short-term lets comes in, because it's a diversity bit about
you've got people who will only ever buy freehold and not leasehold. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. I think where this comes in, so I mean, for us as an investment company, we've got 3 areas. We've got the single let side, we've got the cash investment side, so like the purpose-built student accommodation, which is just stress-free, hands-off, high yields, not really focused on appreciation. And then you've got the short-term let side, and the one that we are looking at options, the HMO side. So HMOs, I just believe, the biggest downfall sometimes is if it doesn't work, then you've got the conversion back. Yeah. And I believe you are limited on what you've got with it. And I believe short-term lets can give the same sort of yields. I mean, so you were mentioning earlier, Rob, that you've got HMOs and short-term lets. From a yield point of view, if you don't mind me asking, do they roughly return the same?
Yeah, they're similar. So we take an approach across our portfolio that is very much portfolio driven. So what return can we get in our portfolio? By that approach, it means that we can look at a straightforward buy-to-let, and it might only have 5 or 6% kind of rental yields, which is below what our expectations would be for the portfolio, which is about 8% plus. But we then have things like short-term let accommodation,
and the extra,
which give us the extra. But if we were to just compare short-term let and HMOs, you'll have some nuances and some kind of outlier scenarios where maybe the location is slightly better for one or another, or the timing is slightly better for one or the other. But the net returns are pretty similar across kind of both of those. When you remove all of the management costs, maintenance, things like that, the returns are similar.
So and from our purposes, then my argument will be, well, you've got far less regulations to deal with. You've got far less restrictions to deal with in terms of what you can have in there. And dependent on whether you buy something to convert into an HMO, where there's obviously a large cost involved, you don't have that cost. It's a furniture pack. So I think it gives you the best bits of all the investments, that you can leverage it, you can get your high returns than normal, but you can also have a single let if you want the security.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think that's the counterbalance, because there's plenty of people that we've spoken to throughout the kind of the recent COVID scenario that have just been all in on one particular strategy, whether it's buy-to-let or HMOs or short-term lets, or even holiday lets to an extent. And then the scenario where lockdown has come in, they've kind of been exposed to an extent where, wholesale that particular industry has changed, or that particular tenant type strategy has changed. So having diversity in the portfolio now more than ever, I think, makes sense. And I think fundamentally the learning that we've seen over the last kind of couple of months as well, but is that the short-term let in is kind of inbuilt almost, that it gives you that flexibility across into the buy-to-let market if you wanted to go into that route again.
I have more than one conversation generally when I take a phone call off a person, and generally that's something I hear quite a lot. Well, I've got 4 or 5 properties already.
Yeah.
I'm just looking to change what I do a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, they're not looking to change the wheel. They just want to see what other options are out there.
Yeah.
You know, and to see if it works and what they can do. And again, that's not a bad thing. And I think the main thing I always want to try and stress is that even if it's a first investment, you want short-term lets, it doesn't have to be a short-term let.
Yeah.
You don't want people to think it's got to have it as an AST. The only difference is you can convert it down the line. You don't have to buy somewhere else to do it. You can convert that one.
Yeah.
You know, because not everyone wants 10 properties, do they? No. You know, at all. But if you're getting sort of, like you say, 5-6% on a standard buy-to-let, and at some point you think, right, okay, well, let's give it a go for a year and see where we only get 8%, then it's money in your bank at the end of the day, isn't it? It's not a bad thing. And one thing, I think there's 2 things that maybe I should have covered earlier, and one about the short-term let side as well that is much looked over. It's the tenant profile side, because what you've got is you're going to have the same apartment in 5 years as you do now, because it's cleaned every week and it's managed. You know, we all know that there's plenty of programs on TV that over exaggerate what it is, but if you get someone in for 12 months and you've got a letting agent that really doesn't do what they're supposed to do, you don't know what state your property is in after 12 months. You know, and it could be all the profit you're taking out has to go back in. Whereas with this, it's literally maintained every week or 2 weeks, whatever it is. It's literally kept pristine, reported on. So put that aside. And
I've had conversations with investors on this actually, that they're where they're protective almost of the kind of the buy-to-let side of it, and I kind of get it, where they want to look at kind of the reasons why maybe a short-term let might kind of fall down, and there are some risks of which we kind of touched on with that video, but the management side of it, I think maybe, and sometimes it's a concern as well, that investors are looking at and thinking, well, if there's lots of people using the property, maybe maintenance is higher, maybe it's very expensive to kind of maintain these types of properties because you hide that high turnover of occupancy almost. But I think the counterbalance to that is that it is inspected regularly, because you have a cleaner going in there, you have a management structure that's keeping...
And they pay deposits. If a lamp's broke, they pay for it. You know, it's definitely the other way. So like I say, we've got a couple of clients that come back, and I'm just thinking one in particular lives in Thailand, and he comes back and we've got reviews of him that his apartment is always spotless. You know, and the fact is, we'll just say, and what we'll do, we'll advise and say, right, okay, you do need a new sofa. Yeah, you do have, don't get me wrong, furniture, you are going to get more use.
Yeah, there'll be wear and tear.
Wear and tear, yeah. But you have that. And when you look at, on the HMO side, you could have 4 or 5 people who don't get on. It could be a nightmare. I mean, there's always those, isn't there? But generally it's good. And then the other side, which we don't need to cover today, and again, it's tax, which I don't really want to get involved in, is there is obviously benefits with furnished holiday lets as well on the tax side. But maybe that's something we can cover at some other time, you know. And
and it's definitely a reason why we've seen some people just move to this part of the industry as well, wholesale, to an extent, with some of their other properties, what they might have had previously, because they've had a conversation with their accountant. Their accountant has highlighted short-term lets. And that's where you need to have that conversation as well. Yeah. So you can kind of, and I think fundamentally this comes down to a portfolio approach as well. Have a conversation with your accountant, your mortgage broker, your team that are going to be sourcing those properties and managing those properties, and just say, okay, well, what does the portfolio look like at the moment? What do the properties look like at the moment? Or if you're starting from scratch, what do you want to build it to kind of look like? And then you can consider which strategies are going to fit into.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll always, when we send information, we'll always let people know about that, and we'll also have plenty of links or plenty of people you can call and discuss that with as well, so you know the benefits of it. But you know, there's gone tangents of all sorts of things about companies, all that sort of thing. I think we don't want to go down that line. It's just what we're trying to say is that we're buying a good investment in the location and giving it more options.
Yeah, perfect.
That's it.
Well, that's it, Paul. Thank you very much for helping us there.
Thank you, Rob.
Just the questions that kind of cover that part of the industry. So hopefully we've got some good answers that can help kind of support investors. So just as a kind of follow up, if you are looking at buying short-term properties, or you are looking at kind of buying investment properties, absolutely, Paul Residential Estates can kind of help you and assist there. You can come via our site, we can introduce you to them. And also there's other types of properties out there, locations out there that kind of change all the time. So we'll try and catch up on another video in the coming kind of weeks and months ahead to see if anything changes. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, bye.